Mulibwanje Zatote. Good morning to everybody in Scotland, and I think it's good afternoon now in Malawi. Welcome all our friends today, our presenters from Christian Aid, CARD, SCIAF, CADECOM, Caritas, who will be introduced when it's their turn, and all those that are involved in the dignified partnerships in Malawi. My name is Natasha Maluza. I am the Communications and Engagement Officer here at the SMP. Before we start the event today, I just have a few housekeeping notes for you all today. So please note that this meeting will be recorded, and we take your continuing participation in this meeting as your consent to be part of being recorded in this meeting. And please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat with your organizations, your email addresses, if you do wish to. And also please note that the chat log will be uploaded onto the event page on our website later on today. So all the contacts will be available for you to attain on the websites. And if you have any direct messages, please make sure that you either put them on the group. And if you've got any questions prior to putting them on the group, please make sure that you ask them at the end of the event or the meeting, which will be our Q&A session. We'll also like to ask if you could please be muted throughout the entire meeting until the Q&A session. And if possible, when you are speaking, if you could please turn on your video on your screen as well. You are all welcome to live tweet. Our Twitter handle is Scotland Malawi. And we'd also like to ask you all, if you're not members of the SMP, we have a link in the chat where you can be able to be a part of our organization. And we will also send out a survey link at the end of the event. So please make sure to fill out the survey. It's usually less than 3 minutes long. And we also have included in the chat our upcoming events link, which you can also go through for our next events. I'd love now to welcome you all, our Interim Deputy CEO from Malawi Scotland Partnership, Ms. Linda Dembo.
Thanks, Natasha, and good afternoon, Malawi. Good morning, Scotland. Really excited to be here and looking forward to this discussion. As you're already aware that the state president of Malawi on 24th of March declared a state of emergency in Malawi due to the food crisis. And I'm really pretty excited to hear more on the work that CARD and CADECOM and others are doing here in Malawi. And recently, just to share with you that we had a meeting, some sort of a training, and I had a chance to meet with some of the teachers in Blantyre as well as here in the central region. And one of the issues that they had pointed out was that the food crisis is actually pushing girls to leave school because some families are looking at girls getting into early marriages as a solution, as a one mouth less to feed in the family. So I just want to emphasize the need for this discussion and also appreciate the interventions that are being given, and also to amplify the problem that is the food crisis has actually caused, especially for the vulnerable girls that are being forced to leave school. I won't say much. I'll push this to Chad to continue the introductions. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you very much, Linda, for joining us today and for all your assistance in bringing this meeting together with our contacts in Malawi. Yeah, just as bit of as part of a context before we kick off and listen to some of our presenters today. I think all of us are aware that over the past year, Malawi has faced many food security challenges due to factors such as the climate change, drought, floods, and economic instability. El Nino has caused conditions which have led to both sporadic and inadequate rains, which have resulted in both droughts and floods, obviously impacting severe crop damage during this period. As Linda made reference to, President Chipo declared the state of disaster in 23 of the 28 districts which has been estimated to impact at least 2 million households. Part of this was to allow for humanitarian support to come in and help with the situation. And we know previous to this that the Scottish government's International Development Fund provided £500,000 to help address this food crisis in Malawi. Now, these funds, as many of us know, were provided to the Scottish Catholic International Aid Fund, SCIAF, and Christian Aid, who are both present at this meeting today, to assist with the distribution of these cash handouts to affect the households and helping them buy what they need to support themselves and their local community. We also hear from their implementing partners in Malawi, the Church's Action in Relief and Development, CARD, and CADECOM or Caritas Malawi, who are with us today as well. So the agenda, hopefully a link has been shared to the agenda in the chat box, which will link to our website, give you an idea of who we'll be hearing from today. Firstly, we're going to be hearing from Christian Aid Scotland, Christian Aid Malawi, and CARD in Malawi, from Val Brown, Chipo Kachiwala, and Melton Luhanga, who have designed a joint presentation. I believe that they can talk about their collaboration point there. So if I could hand over to Val, Chipo, and Melton, if they're able to screen share their presentation.
Thanks, Chad. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Apologies for your inability to see me. I've had a little bit of technical difficulties this morning, but as long as you're able to hear me, I'm going to be very brief so that I can give more time to Chipo and Melton to speak about the project. Christian Aid works in around 30 countries around the world, and we always work through local partners because we believe that the partners, and more so the people in poverty that they represent, best know what has to be done to lift people out of poverty. And as an organisation, we don't just seek to deal with the symptoms of poverty, but rather to try and address the underlying structural causes. And as such, over the years, we've taken part in many advocacy areas, such as campaigning to end apartheid, campaigning for fair trade, for the relief of debt, for gender justice, tax justice, and probably for the last 10, 15 years, most prominently on climate justice. And climate has been our main campaign since 2007, because our partners from right around the world are telling us that it has to be. The message that we heard as early as 2007 was that we could forget making poverty history because climate change was making poverty permanent. And for people who rely on the land to make a living, increasingly erratic weather makes life harder for them. Longer periods of drought, often followed by flash flooding, makes it all but impossible to grow crops. And that's why, as an organisation, we've supported people to adapt to the reality of climate change through different farming techniques, diversification of crops, and alternative sources of income. However, much of the weather we are witnessing now goes beyond adapting, which is why we're talking about climate loss and damage. And the support that people need when they face multiple vulnerabilities. And so we're hugely grateful to the Scottish Government for the HEF funding that we received to support communities who are struggling due to these multiple climate shocks. So I'll hand over now to Chipo and Melton, who will be able to tell you much more about the specifics of the project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Val. Just confirm if you're all able to see my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. We can.
All right. Thank you so much. So through this presentation, I think I'll take you through a bit of context so that people who do not know much about Malawi will be able to appreciate that. As Val mentioned, we recently received funding to respond to food crisis in a district called Mwanza. And this was a response to the lean season which different households were going through in Malawi. A bit of context. My first slide is looking at climate change impact on food security. Chad, I think, mentioned earlier that last year Malawi suffered from tropical cyclone Freddy, which really damaged, had a big impact on agriculture, especially the southern part of Malawi. It destroyed over 440,000 acres of land, displaced over 600,000 people, and also just affected their livestock, and over 2 million smallholder farmers were affected. As people were recovering from that, this year we have been hit by the El Nino, and yeah, just to echo what others have said, the El Nino has really had an impact on the crop estimates in terms of harvest, with districts like Mwanza, which is where my cursor is, being affected. Their harvest will be reduced by over 35% of their normal harvest. So that's the impact of El Nino, and a bit on the cyclone Freddy. To make things more or less worse in terms of access to food, last year Malawi made a macroeconomic policy to devalue the currency. And because of that devaluation, which was needed to happen, but because of that devaluation, that has skyrocketed prices for food. Unfortunately, the devaluation did not go directly into increasing income for the most vulnerable households. And as such, the prices have gone high, and that has also worsened the access to food in the country. So as we're designing the project, I should mention here that the support from Scottish government was timely, because if you can look at this sector where this bar here, where it's showing lean season in Malawi from November to March, it's usually the lean season, and a simple description is that this is a period when most of the most vulnerable households will only have one meal in a day, and because of El Nino, normally they would rely on indigenous veggies from the surrounding, but because of El Nino, they weren't able to do so. And yeah, just the support, I think, was timely, as Melton will demonstrate, as he will be presenting what actually happened during the implementation. So let me hand it over to Melton to talk more about the actual project. Melton. Melton, if you're able to jump in, just check if your mic has been unmuted. Over. Chat, just checking if you are able to hear me, because I'm not able to hear.
No, I think Melton's got he seems to be unmuted, but I agree, we're not hearing you. Sorry, Melton.
Then I'll remove the I've removed the headsets. Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I was saying, as Chipo and Val have clearly indicated, the assistance from the Scottish government was a stitch in time, or timely assistance. Indeed, we got that funding and we moved in quickly to Mwanza, and we targeted the community that was already at the verge of suffering because of the continued lean season. So 70% of the households that we targeted are led by women or women-headed households. And we operated in the district that had the least number of partners that could assist there. We adopted the recommended package by the Malawi Vulnerability Assessment Committee on interventions such as humanitarian response like this one. So next slide, Chipo. Yeah, so the Christian Aid identified us because yeah, Chipo, yes, go ahead. So that's the process that we went through up to the time of receiving the funds, just for others to appreciate. And the emphasis there is that individuals have to sign for their money that they have received. And count the money. Thank you, Chipo. Next slide. Yeah, so the total budget that we utilized in Mwanza is £250,000. And as I indicated, we are responding to the rain season, which has been extended. The project was for 2 months, and we worked in Tie, Kanduku, Ntache, and Govat in Mwanza district. We were meant to assist 3,100 households, but we went up to 3,184 vulnerable households, 1,000 Malawi, 138,500 kwacha, which is equal to 62.72 months. And next, Chipo. Chipo, continue. Yeah, so the issues that we did from our side were entry meetings into the district, and did the registration together with the district officials, did the verification so that the right persons are assisted, and we did the validation. Validation is to ensure that the right person gets the right assistance. And then we set up an accountability mechanism, and then we did the cash distribution. And then at the end of the program, we did a post-distribution assessment to see how this program is assisting the people that we intended to assist. We also had project exit meetings from the district, as well as from the areas where we are working, all of which indicated that this was a timely assistance, which we had. And we had 712 households in Tie Govati, 814 households in Tie Kanduku, and the 1,658 in Tie Ntache. Yeah, and the impact of this assistance, or maybe before I come to that, the area where we are working, or the areas where we are working, are they don't have a good road, and they are quite a challenge to access, but we managed to go there because we are saying this is where the need is. Of course, in getting to know who should get the assistance, we had a problem because some households were indicated as if they are having assistance from the government social cash transfer, but they were not. Yeah, so we were able to isolate those. Yes. So those were some of the challenges that we made. In terms of impact, we are so pleased to realize that the individuals that got the funds, some of them were persons with disability, were able to plow that money into buying useful tools like tools and seed so that they continue with the farming activities. Like the story of the woman you are seeing now, she indicated that we as farmers, our source of food has been food from the soil. However, recent years have not been kind to them, but they were able to invest that money into something. And it's not only sorting out farming problems or challenges, but also they were able to help them to put their school children back to school. Next, which will be last but my final slide. The other story from Ms. Gentle, she's indicating that she used part of the money to get food, and that put the smiles back to her household, and she's thankful to the Scottish government as well as to Christian Aid and CAD. You can see Messi. Can you point Chipo to Messi, the lady? Yeah, so she's a 50-year-old farmer, and utilize that funding to cultivate, and then we expect that the funds that she has received will not only help her in food production, but also continue with her agricultural work. So all in all, we are very thankful. We know the need is still there, but we need to appreciate that the assistance was timely, and the 3,184 households that have been assisted actually are able to do other productive work. So for that, we say thank you, Scottish Government, and thank you all other colleagues that put the thought that we should intervene in Mwanza. Thank you for the time being. If there are questions, we'll tackle them as they come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melton and Val and Chipo, for that. I see we have one comment there from Stuart in the chat box. Maybe while we have just a moment and have you here, Melton, you mentioned that a lot of it was targeted towards female-led households. Could you just have speak a little bit about why they were targeted, those households were targeted?
Thank you. Yeah, actually our line of thinking is that when you assist female-headed households, you are able to reach out many people in the household, because most of the females are able to cater for their families in terms of food provision and also assistance towards those that are in need, like school fees and the like, in case those are needed. Not to demean males, but our findings have been that sometimes if you do a lot of assistance towards the males, they are able to move with that money to do other things, like they would go to a pub and drink of that money, which most of the females wouldn't, because they know they need to care for their families. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melton, for that follow-up there. Charles, I note your question there about efforts and interventions going forward. If we could just hold that until after we've heard from SCIAF and the other presenters and during the Q&A, I think that's a good question to open up to everyone who's present. So if we could hand over now to Jonathan Dames, who's Emergency Officer at SCIAF, and the Malawi Program Officer, Chris, who's with us as well, and who I believe just returned from Malawi not too long ago, and Richard Kusseni, who is in Malawi, obviously. Actually, Jonathan and Chris, please, from your side, from SCIAF, I believe you're going to hand over to Richard when you're done. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. Everyone can hear me okay? Yeah. So thank you, Scottish Malawi Partnership, for hosting the meeting. It's very timely, and it's great to see a lot of colleagues and partners both out in Malawi and here in Scotland, not least of which is the representatives from the Scottish Government who have to a large extent galvanised this most recent response to the food crisis. So maybe just sketch in a little bit how this particular funding stream came together before I hand over to our colleagues in Caritas Malawi to explain how the funding was used. So the Scottish Government maintains quite a kind of healthy and open engagement with many of the big partners, humanitarian partners that have a Scottish base, of which SCIAF is one and Christian Aid another. And back in late January, their international division contacted us to hear our perspective of our partners on the kind of the growing food crisis in Malawi and in neighbouring Zambia, and the appetite and ability to respond to that. Because of kind of fiscal timelines, and unusually, this was very much a sort of donor-led response in that it was pretty much had to be a food response. Normally we would, our partners would, after carrying out assessments, would suggest a series of potential interventions, much of which is often now cash-based. It is the sort of default response in crises. But this one in particular, in discussions anyway with our partners out there, the conclusion very quickly was that actually a very rapid injection of cash into particular communities would be an appropriate response.
Sorry, Jonathan, you accidentally muted yourself there, I think, or hopefully one of us didn't do that to you.
All right. So pretty much within a week of the Scottish Government's International Division being in touch, and us then working with CADECOM Malawi, we were able to put together a proposal for a sort of rapid cash distribution programme in response to the food crisis, which my colleague Richard will talk about shortly. And then from being contacted by the International Division to our proposal being submitted, being approved, and then cash being distributed, I think by mid-February, the funds had arrived in Malawi for distribution. So it was, again, thank you to the Scottish Government for being able to turn around something like this very, very quickly in a very sort of short time period. So With that, I will I'll hand over to Richard, who'll talk a bit more about the sort of the nature of our response, and then of course we have Chris, who was out recently just visiting that and a number of other programmes, including a loss and damage programme funded by the Scottish Government, of which actually CARD are partners. So thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, that's coming through, Richard.
Great, thanks. So yeah, I'll just I'll pick up from there just to give a little bit of more detail in terms of the cash injection program that we did in Malawi. Just for the sake of others, I just wanted to just share a bit of background to CADECOM as one of the humanitarian actors in Malawi. So we are the development and relief arm of the Episcopal Conference of Malawi, like the Catholic Church. And at the national level, we're also part of the humanitarian cluster, together with other partners here also present, like Christian Aid, CARD, and others. And just to also mention that in terms of our establishment, we have like a physical presence across all the 28 districts through our church structure, which is organized in dioceses. So we have 8 dioceses that encompass all the 28 districts. Giving us an edge in terms of operations at district and community level, also through our volunteers, which now we claim over 10,000 volunteers across the country that we have trained and then support us in terms of implementation of various programs in the humanitarian space. And so our thematic areas are climate change adaptation, mitigation, and of course, food and nutrition security. So just quick highlights also in terms of our contribution to on the humanitarian space is that we have tried also then to build resilience, alluding to the fact that as already mentioned by earlier on, I think Chipo mentioned the same, and of course Jonathan, that the country has been hit by several climate-related disasters, which has derailed development and of course affected resilience and livelihoods among our communities. So in as much as we do humanitarian response, but we also into kind of resilience development. So we have tried to build capacity of over 500 village savings groups. Now they are able to match grants with various grant making facilities, which we think could also help cushion the resilience amongst vulnerable communities. Since in 2023, we also provided humanitarian assistance to 8,000 households, supporting them with food and non-food items, of course, the communities that were affected by Cyclone Freddy. And following that, in terms of how we had managed, and then we were also accorded the best organization in terms of emergency response in 2023, which was actually presented by the president. So this is just to mention that in terms of the humanitarian space, we are really doing the best we can to support the vulnerable groups. Coming to the project in reference in terms of the food crisis response, with support from the Scottish Government, goes through our partner, the SCIAF. We were supported equally, I think, just as Christian Aid was. We were supported with 250,000 pounds to support the food crisis through a cash transfer program. So for us, we are in line with the Malawi Vulnerability Assessment Committee regulations and the cash transfer cluster, which actually allows cash transfers within the range of 50,000 kwacha to 150,000 kwacha. We thought giving out 100,000 kwacha, which is an equivalent to about 46 pounds would be ideal and meaningfully make a difference among the households that were affected by hunger during the lean season. That I think I'll not go into detail on, as Chipo, I think, ably also mentioned around that or described the lean season. So we managed to reach out to 4,520 households with cash transfers within around about 3 weeks after the dispensation of the funds to us through SCIAF. So I think by the 31st of March, we had given out all the cash to the beneficiaries. Following which, we have also then conducted a post-distribution monitoring just to assess the impact. I think on that point, I would be quick to say that from the results of the post-distribution monitoring exercise, it really shows how helpful or impactful the support was for the households, because most of them would say they were at least able to buy food that would take them through at least an average of 4 to 5 weeks for the households, which we thought was really a timely support, first of all, and even as reviewed also by the post-distribution monitoring. But at the same time, it was then going towards the period when people would start harvesting. But obviously, there are some emerging concerns, as already alluded to by by the other speakers. The demand for support remains huge because of the El Nino. People have not really harvested as they normally do, so harvests have really dropped. But at the same time, especially parts of the lakeshore have also experienced floods. Areas like Kota Kota, now Mangoji, Kada Bay, and parts of Salima, they have experienced floods, which have also, worsened the situation in terms of food security. And at the same time, we also find that the price for maize, normally would have expected that the price for maize now would be going, would drop because people now are harvesting, but it has actually rose from 300 kwacha per kg in 2023 during the same period to a range of 500 kwacha as at least in the government markets and the government recommended price to 800 kwacha, which mostly is the kind of the actual market price. So this actually represents a rise of over 150%, which is really quite huge for a common person. So, and again, this also, adds on the already worrying situation in terms of stunting, which is estimated at around 42%, and definitely likely to increase with the hunger situation at present. So as at the moment, following these kind of revelations from the post-distribution monitoring, and as much as we are grateful for this to the Scottish government for the support, which has impacted on lives of 4,520 households, but then the demands are still huge, and then we have launched an appeal, an emergency appeal to address further the food crisis issue. And it's been posted through our Caritas international platform, the Baobab platform, and it's estimated at 382,000 euros. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, this is the picture in terms of what the support has done and what we are currently doing as CADECOM, but also with support by our partners, SCIAF, and of course the Scottish government. Thank you very much. Maybe I could take the comments after this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard, and to all of you for, not a very positive outlook, unfortunately, but I think the reality that we're all aware of with the climate-led, mostly disasters that have been faced and how that's impacting on agriculture, particularly in the long term. I'll go back around to a question that Charles put in the chat box earlier, which I think is appropriate now, knowing the situation. Apart from the short-term efforts to save lives, particularly focusing on the cash handouts to those families, what interventions would any of you that presenting today, or anyone who's present in the meeting, recommend in the long run? What recommendations, for supporters, for the government, does anyone have, and for communities? Seeming it's a very uphill battle when you're fighting against the climate, I guess.
Yeah, I think one of the things that struck me when I was there is the completely unpredictable nature of the climate shocks. Is that you see communities that are affected by floods in one part of the country and prolonged dry spells in another part of the country. So the efforts to improve resilience are quite difficult for that reason, because particularly with El Nino combined with the successive tropical cyclones which affected the country over the last 2 years, resilience has already been badly affected. So I think the best efforts of smallholder farmers are really tested in terms of resilience because of the combination of floods and dry spells, which makes every normal effort to improve resilience very difficult. I think one of the things which is striking about Malawi is the huge reliance on rain-fed agriculture. Is that only something like 5% of farmers use irrigation to extend the growing season and to do winter harvests. And that is obviously something which could improve resilience, but there's problems with the cost of that, and also sometimes the irrigation systems which are in use are not particularly equitable, so they're not accessible to the poorest farmers. So I think there's a range of approaches which have been proven to be helpful. So obviously there's agroecological approaches which are about improving watershed management, improving the storage capacity of soils, and introducing communal solar irrigation, which is managed through community structures such as the VNRMCs, the Village Natural Resource Committees, which the government has set up in recent years. So I think there's a whole range of responses in addition to humanitarian responses that need to be prioritised. And I think extending the growing season and agroecological approaches to improving soils and watershed management are among those.
Thank you very much, Chris. Yeah, no, as many of you in the call know, I lived in Malawi for 20 years. So yeah, and it was often extending that growing season, taking advantage of obviously the lake and the other riverine areas that we have in terms of agriculture would be fantastic. So great for giving those kinds of things. I guess it's like you said, the access to those technologies, which I think is a perfect transition. Alex, we're happy to hear from you and Tieni and your interventions at the moment, particularly with your deep bed farming.
Hello. Hi, yes, hi there. So my name is Alex Gerard. I'm Executive Director of Tieni. We're based up in Mazuzu, but we work across the whole of Malawi. For those that don't know us, for the last 20 years, we've developed a methodology of farming called deep bed farming. In 2021, it was formally approved by the Ministry of Agriculture as not only an effective method of farming, but the most climate resilient for smallholder farmers. It is a slight departure from some of the traditional methods of farming, but it actually works with the land and is focused on water capture and harvesting. On a deep bed farm, about 94% of water that lands on the field is harvested and goes back into the ground, recharging aquifers. And also on reducing soil erosion in that process as well. The farms that do deep bed double their crops in the first season. And why that is particularly pertinent to what we're talking about now is I'm just looking at, we have a WhatsApp feed with our team, field officers, and last night our measurement evaluation manager sent through a number of case studies, including a video. We have one from Nalondi, so EPA, so in Malanje, the base of the mountains, We also have some up in Chiwamba, and all of the farmers that are currently farming with deep bed have found that their crops have are still thriving compared with conventional ridge farming that's next in the same field or on their neighbour's field. Their crop loss is a lot less. They're still looking at double cobs per stalk as opposed to a single one. And this is both in conditions that are dry, the drought areas, because our methodology breaks up the compacted hard pan that sits below that most farmers do not deal with because it's heavy work. Because that's dealt with in year one, water is able to percolate down into the soils, which means the shallow water aquifers are readily available during periods of drought, and the roots, importantly, that can't naturally go through this hard pan unless it's like trees and shrubs, but certainly not maize roots and other cash crops, are able to reach this water during the drought season. And conversely, in the areas of flooding, deep bed fields are far more resilient. They absorb water, and the ridge design that we have, which is closed furrows rather than open furrows, makes for a stronger rigid structure that can withstand the water levels as well, because water is absorbed rather than runs over the field. When there's a lot less incidence of extreme flooding, and even when there is flooding, the crops have deeper root bases, so they're not washed away when that happens. So happy offline, because there's so much going on here. We've literally got examples over the last week of both drought conditions, case studies, and flood condition responses coming directly from our farmers and the extension officers as well. Because from our perspective, sorry, just to finish off, from our perspective, we've never been an emergency response organization. We're an agricultural farming practice organization focused specifically on food and water security. But we have always looked at mitigation and avoiding the situation where handouts are needed. It's a long process, but we're slowly getting there. So, really, really keen to work with partners like Christian Aid to help us expand where we're working, and we're currently working out a model to train all the extension officers in Malawi, which is about 3,500, along with the area coordinators. The government have tasked us with training all of their officers in deep bed farming so that we can support farmers across the whole country. I'll stop there, Chad, sorry.
No, that's fine, Alex. Thank you very much. Yeah, that was, I guess, if I had any follow-up question is, what success you've had with spitting that out, and it's good to hear that, you've been tasked to work with those extension officers, and fantastic for you to extend your hand, with the other organizations here. Obviously, the Scotland-Malawi partnership, that's what we're striving to do, to bring people to the same virtual table so that, the impact can be hopefully multiplied as much as your crop yields. So does anyone else please have anything to share or questions for any of the presenters here? I'm a teacher, so I'm good at wait time if need be. Charles, please. Yes, just.
Many thanks, Chad. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Great. I mean, thanks to the team really for the great presentations, and Alex as well for the positive work you're doing with smallholders up north the country. I mean, looking at the current food crisis, I was just having a chat with someone on how on some days it's giving me sleepless nights. The difference of the dry spells and the flooding, is that with the flooding, images would be all over showing the damage, and with that, you would get that into public conversations in and outside the country. But with the dry spells, it's so tricky and dangerous in that, and the only time you really get to see things getting worse, then it means things are really worse. maybe what approach is, I mean, this is to all of us. Are we putting in place to just really tell the story of suffering on the ground, and instead also just show some of these positive things that we're doing that are really changing lives in a big way. So how are we communicating the crisis and the impending dangers of inaction with the rights payers in the country? Over.
No, thank you, Charles, for those observations. So I'm just trying to have a look at the chat box here. Yeah, as mentioned, hearing from different initiatives in different parts of the country, obviously trying to join those up and share best practices is obviously going to be ideal. And I can see a lot of, Alex, a lot of people who are very keen to visit some sites where the deep bed farming practice is being practiced, myself included. Stuart and I will be in Malawi in June, so hopefully we can visit some of your farmers and extension officers while we're there. I guess one of my personal concerns I'll just throw out there too is the reliance on maize, both in terms of a food source and obviously economically, it being, you know, quite viable for families and communities. And if there's how much progress or initiative there is in diversifying, you know, crops, and does that have any bearing on the climate crisis that we're facing in terms of resilience to drought and flooding? Obviously input cost in terms of fertilizer, but also the nutritional level. You know, from what I understand, SEMA is not the most nutritional. You know, it does fill the stomach and satisfy, but is it the most nutritional? And are there other crops that should be encouraged or diversified, or other communities actually, like I forget, someone mentioned earlier on the local vegetation that is normally supplements the meal that have been impacted, but is there a way to increase the yields of the kind of other grains and so forth? I don't know if anybody has a comment on that.
Chad, there's a hand from Richard.
Yes, Richard, sorry. I'm seeing that now. Jump on in.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think in terms of the dependence on maize, I think it's really quite an issue. In some of our initiatives, apart from the response, in some of our resilience programs, what we are also promoting is the diversification component, and coupling it with nutrition education. Only that I think as at the moment, the scale in terms of our implementation is still a little bit small. But otherwise, our plan is to, you know, upscale those kind of interventions. But otherwise, yes, we are promoting, even procuring cassava cuttings, sweet potatoes, or like the orange fresh sweet potatoes that we're giving out to farmers, and promoting such type of production, so that at least nutrition wise, we can improve the nutrition levels in those communities. So yeah, just to agree with you, but there's just need to enhance in terms of such kind of programming. Thanks, and
No, thank you very much, Richard. Melton, please.
Yeah, we also, in other programs, we are trying to expand agroecological practices So issues of crop diversification, and of late, we have done a demonstration on what we call syntropic agriculture, which is a combination of establishment of long-term crops and the trees and fruit trees, so that the reliance on the maize is being reduced. And we have seen, we just started introducing that in Mulanje starting from November, and the results are already showing that I think we are in the right direction. Our agroecology advisor set up that demonstration farm, and a lot of people are already interested to see how that works. So, Shad, when you are here, you can visit our syntropic demonstration in Mulanje if you have time, and see. But apart from that, we are also into solar irrigation and utilization of residual moisture. We have realized that places that get flooded, like in the lower Shire, and including places like Mwanza, they have a lot of resources that can be utilized after flooding. So those are some of the technologies that we feel can be expanded, resources allowing. Thank you.
No, thank you, Melton. I remember when I lived in Blantyre, particularly being in Blantyre, it was a very sad joke that people said one of our #1 exports was our topsoil, as it went down the Shire and into the Zambezi. So yeah, being able to harvest or harness, I guess, some of those things. So thank you very much. So I'm just seeing the comment from our colleague in Zambia, Chilafula from the beans. Do you mind commenting a little bit on that, on the pulses?
We think she left chat.
Okay. That's what I was just trying to. That's fine. Thank you. Perhaps I could call on our CEO at Scotland Malawi Partnership, Stuart Brown, to provide a few summary points. If anybody has any other comments or questions, please raise your hand or pop it in. But on my behalf, thank you all for your presentations. And like I said, our #1 goal is just to get everybody around the same table, and hopefully you've made some contacts. As we said at the beginning, if you put anything you share in the chat box will be loaded up to our past event page, and that link will be shared with you from since you've registered later. So any connections that you make because of this meeting, we hope are useful. And yeah, let me hand over to Stuart for a few comments.
Chad, thanks very much. We heard, first of all, from Chipo from CARD, reminding us of the devastation of last year's tropical cyclone Freddy. 440,000 acres damaged, 600,000 people displaced, over 2 million smallholder farmers affected. And this year in Malawi, in districts like Mwanza, as Chipo told us, the impacts of El Nino, over 35% of the harvest reduced. Challenges compounded with the devaluation, or the results of the devaluation of the kwacha, with food prices and other daily essentials going up very considerably. And the intervention from the Scottish Government has been characterised by a number of speakers as timely, with Chipo mentioning the availability of indigenous veg, normally relied upon in the lean season for the one meal of a day, being particularly scarce. And Melton telling us how swiftly they were able to move with the £250,000 from the Scottish Government, targeting 70% female-led households for the reason that he put very well, the focus on nutrition and the well-being of the household from female-led households. Focusing on districts with least donor support available, and we saw that video played with people signing for the cash injection, which reached 3,184 vulnerable households in 3 traditional authorities. And then all of the diligence, the due diligence procedures that we heard about in the brilliant assessment, which went into the monitoring, evaluation, and learning from it. The purchase of tools and seeds for the longer term, and not just the immediate crisis. And a lovely quote of a beneficiary, Melina Fungulani, who said, "The cash we received helped me sort out a number of problems. For that, I'm very grateful. With that cash aid, I was able to buy maize, beans, and also pay school fees for my child who's in secondary school. And I was also able to send my son to take my wheelchair to the garage to get it fixed." So real life impact. Jonathan at SCIAF again spoke of the swiftness of the intervention within a week. SCIAF working with CADECOM, having listened all importantly to local partners in Malawi and hearing that it was a rapid cash injection that was most important. 520, Richard then gave us an overview of CADECOM's impact in humanitarian work in the past year, building the capacity of 524 village groups involving 67% women, and providing food assistance in the past year to 8,000 households, which is fantastic. And then on the specific issue of food security and the most immediate present crisis of around 100,000 kwacha, £46 per household, reaching 4,520 households in just 3 weeks, which Richard explained will help see people through for 4 or 5 weeks. So brilliant work. But Richard reminding us that demand really remains huge, flooding having worsened the situation, and the very high cost of maize having gone up a lot in the past year, and that startling statistic of 42% of stunting. And very understandable that an appeal has been launched for the longer term. Chris, having been to Malawi again recently, sharing how completely unpredictable the weather is, and the huge challenge for smallholder farmers, the reliance of the country on rain-fed agriculture, the lack of equitability of access to that, and the challenge of the costs of solutions to that, but lots of hope there as well in other potential solutions of communal solar resources. And brilliant to hear from Tieni, from you, Alex, on the progress of deep bed farming, and to read and chat and hear, as Chad says, the interest amongst people in visiting and hearing more about that. And we at the Scotland Malawi Partnership very happy to share in any of these case studies, Alex, that Tieni would like to share. Fabulous to hear of farmers doubling their crop yield in the first season. Charles asking the important question of how are we communicating the crisis, and that's one of the things that we as a small network, together with our sister organisation, the Malawi Scotland Partnership, are very keen to do, is to help raise the alarm and provide a forum, as Chad says, for people to come round a virtual table together. So I think something that I'd certainly be very keen to do is to commit to follow up with our agriculture and food security forum in the next quarter or 6 months, and to invite all of you to attend that, and to feed any resources that you would like to us as a network for us to amplify and share with others. We'll be very happy to amplify CADECOM's appeal, for example. So thank you very much indeed for setting everything out so clearly, and for all the brilliant work that's been undertaken. Chad, back to you.
Thank you very much, Stuart. And yeah, I will also reiterate, Stuart's kind of requested to please stay in touch with us, with our colleagues at MaSP and ourselves at SMP. And we would like to make this a regular reoccurring forum. We have had some discussions on when we use the term forum and how we silo some of these things between agriculture and food security, but also appreciating with our renewables forum and colleagues, you know, when we talk about solar irrigation and other things, that a lot of these are cross-cutting. So, and also to once again, invite you all. You know, Natasha leads so well on our weekly newsletters, which we hope you all receive and have a chance to go through. But any of your initiatives and updates, please do keep in contact with us so we can share that through our social media and newsletter. And any ideas on coming together again, like Stuart said, within the next quarter or up to 6 months. We obviously never want to pull people away from their you know, dedication that they're doing with the communities they work with, but we do appreciate the time that people can give. So we are a little bit ahead of schedule, which is fantastic, but I don't want to keep people if we've heard from everyone, but happy to have any comments from the floor or any other questions anyone have. Otherwise, all I can say once again is Zikomo Kombili for joining today. And as we said, you'll get an email directly after this. It takes 2 minutes to do a quick survey. Some of our colleagues from Scottish Government are on the call. That's why we need those surveys completed so we can report back to them, particularly on any of your insights and how we can improve our programming. Yes, if you'd like to add your contacts in the chat box, that'll be distributed with the past events page as well. But thank you all for joining, and have a good rest of the week, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.